I don't believe that abortion is good. I think it's murder.
Is that a religious reason?
Scientifically, I do believe it's murder.
Science doesn't determine anything to be murder. Murder is a moral assertion. You expected me as a 17-year-old to be ready to like take care of and like raise children.
That's the important part of education. They should know that babies come from. I think if
Well,
more people knew that,
obviously I knew that, right? But I know that if I drive in the car, right, that could also lead to me getting hit by another car and I could die in that crash. But that doesn't mean I consent to dying in the crash just because I drove the car. I don't have a uterus. It doesn't have to be in a uterus. What are you talking about?
I
I'm saying a
for me,
zygote.
IVF is different for
It's
me.
wait, it's a human life.
It it's different if
How is
it's
it different?
IVF because in the uterus it's cultivated and
What
it
the
will.
does that mean? Why do you support Trump?
I just align more with the values of Republicans, and I don't really think Kamala would have done a great job.
Kamala? Okay. What values?
With abortion,
Okay. What specifically?
I don't believe that abortion is good. I think it's murder.
Is that a religious reason or is that just like are you not religious?
Scien- Scientifically, I do believe it's murder.
Science doesn't determine anything to be murder. Murder is a moral assertion, right? It's about whether or not
Yeah,
you see something to be unjustified. So that's not what science is.
yeah. So I believe morally it is wrong to kill a human zygote.
Yeah, is that because of religious influences or is that independent of religion?
I am religious, but I would say even if I
Do you
wasn't
separate
religious,
church and
I
state?
yes.
Okay, so why should abortion be illegal in the first trimester?
I do believe that you shouldn't take life away from something that is to come, a human life.
Okay, so you're saying that is to come. You're not really giving like a reason why you consider it valuable. You're just saying whatever, if it's life to come or if it is life, you consider it valuable.
Yes, because I think all
Any
life,
kind of cellular life.
I think specifically human life
Okay.
is valuable.
What about human sperm? Do you find human sperm to be valuable? It's cellularly
Um,
alive.
I believe that the zygote is what we consider life to be
Okay.
because it is male and female, and it will be life because it's in the uterus.
Okay. So then here would be my question. Say you're in a burning building and you could either save, right, three zygotes or one newborn baby. Which would you rather save?
Newborn baby.
Why? I thought you're comparing three people to one person. You're saying that one person is more valuable to three people, given you
I
know
don't think
nothing about the individuals other
I
than
don't
just that
think
they're a
that
person.
it's a great argument to put like this kind of thing, but I just
How
have
about
the
a
quote.
hundred zygotes or one newborn baby? Which one?
I think that a newborn baby, but I don't think that this is like applicable in the real world. So my question is to you, like, why do you believe that it would be okay if it were an accident to kill a zygote?
Okay. But like I'm demonstrating this point to you right now. Would you rather save the hundred or the one newborn baby? Rather save the newborn baby, right?
I would like for all of them to be able to be born, but
I
if it were
understand.
up to the option, then it would have to be Northern Baby because it is at that point.
Okay, I understand. So that you at least value a newborn baby 100 times more than you value uh like a zygote, right?
I think they're equally as important. I don't
If they're
think that.
equally important, then one zygote would be equivalent to one newborn baby. So two zygotes would mean that you care more about the two zygotes than the one newborn baby. That's obviously against your intuitions, though, so you wouldn't say that, right?
I don't think that it makes sense to do this comparison because it's not real life.
What do you mean? We are referencing like an example that's relevant to real world examples. Like
Okay,
think about it this way: if you're building a school, and you want to build the school in a way in which will reduce the likelihood of children being unalived due to mass school unalivings, right? You're going to think about hypothetical scenarios of what could happen if there was a mass unaliver there, right? Even though it hasn't happened yet, because it is the case that that would be relevant towards you building the school in a certain way, right? So hypotheticals are extraordinarily relevant, right, to our daily lives. Sure,
Mhm.
there you could say there are some hypotheticals that aren't relevant, but the hypothetical I brought up was clearly relevant. So it's like you should engage with it.
Yeah, I think the hypothetical could be relevant if we're talking about abortion, but if we're talking about zygotes, 100 versus 1, the baby is being born, and then the 100 zygotes would be born. So I think that it's a
We're,
little
we're, we're saying the 100
different.
zygotes in the future will be born.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if I can just change the topic a little bit, is that okay?
Okay.
Just like, I think that every action has a consequence, and I think that if you are willing to have unprotected before
If it's
marriage,
protected, then can you get an abortion?
if it is protected, I don't think you will get pregnant.
Well, if they do get pregnant, because 51% of abortions come from failed contraceptives, given it is the case that they get pregnant specifically, even though they used contraceptives, right? Would it be the case that they would then be forced by law to go through the pregnancy, or should they be allowed to get an abortion then?
I think, in my opinion, there's only specific examples of abortion that I agree with. More of like a religious concept, not scientifically, if I could say that. So I would say that if it was those two, I think, and what's the other one I was thinking of? There's one more I can't think of right now, but there's specific cases, it would be like case by case, that I would agree with abortion. But other than that, I think if you're willing to take the risk of having sex and having a baby, then you
Okay, so,
should
so now
be.
it's not about protection.
No, if it is protected.
Okay, so if it's protected, then are you obligated?
If it's protected, obligated to have a baby.
Yeah, like, can you get an access to an abortion legally under your worldview if it is the case that you used protection?
I think if you're taking the risk to do that and to get pregnant, then you should not be
Okay,
able
so
to
so
get it.
why I don't know why you brought up protection, right? That was irrelevant. Either way, you're going to say they have responsibility because they engaged in. Right?
Yeah, I just don't believe if you are taking the right precautions that you will get
Are you
pregnant.
are
What
you
if
are
you
you
kept it
like are
sex?
you like an incel?
What do you mean? I wait until marriage, but that's my personal reason. And
Okay,
then once I am married, I will be prepared to have a family. That's what
okay.
my.
So are you saying everyone should have to live that way?
No, not everyone will live that way, but I believe that if you're taking the risk, you should be ready for the act. Like that, every action has the consequence. You should be ready for the consequence.
So you're saying that like when I was engaging in intercourse in high school, right? That I should have been ready to have a kid at that point.
You know what the outcome is.
Wait, are you saying that I should have been ready?
If you know what you're doing and you know the outcome, you should be ready to prepare for that.
So you expect a 17-year-old to be ready?
If they decide to do that, it's
I
their.
just I just want to clarify. You expected me as a 17-year-old to be ready to like take care of and like raise children.
That's the important part of education. They should know that babies come from. I think if
Well,
more people
obviously,
knew that.
obviously I knew that, right? But I know that if I drive in the car, right, that could also lead to me getting hit by another car and I could die in that crash. But that doesn't mean I consent to dying in the crash just because I drove the car,
Yeah.
right? That would be absurd.
Okay. I don't think it really corresponds, but
What do you mean? You're saying that because it is the case that you choose to engage in the action of like that you're consenting, right, to the biological outcome of pregnancy. Okay.
yeah.
In the same way that like someone would be saying that like, oh, just because it is the case that you drove, you chose to drive, knowing that you could have gotten into a car accident, means you consented to the car accident? No.
I think while you're driving, you know the risks of what can happen.
Sure, you could say
You're
you
not
you could say you know
oblivious.
the risks, but I don't see at all how that means that you should be forced to go through a pregnancy for like a non-sentient embryo, right?
I don't know about that because I think
Seriously, tell me.
Human life is valuable,
Well,
and
you said
every
that it
life.
wasn't very valuable. You said the zygotes weren't very valuable. You'd rather save the
Don't
one
twist my
newborn baby,
words.
right?
Don't twist my words. I didn't say they were not valuable.
Would you
I
cry
said
if I killed a zygote on stream right now?
if you had an abortion, that
No, no, no,
is
no. If I had a zygote on stream right now and I just fucking killed that, would you be sad?
is it in your uterus?
It doesn't have to. I don't have a uterus. It doesn't have to be in a uterus. What are you talking about?
I
I'm saying a
for me,
zygote.
IVF is different for
It's
me.
wait. It's a human life.
It it's different if
How is
it's
it different?
IVF because in the uterus it's cultivated and
What
it
the
will
does that mean? So the zygote's not valuable if it's not cultivated? What the
like if you let an IVF just sit there, it will not live.
you mean a
Correct?
zygote just sit there?
Outside
So are you
of a
saying that it has
female
to have
body.
future potential?
Yes,
If you get an abortion prior to the point of sentience, isn't it never going to like reach that point?
it will because the zygote divides and
No, it will
divides and divides.
because you got the abortion.
Okay, well that's the point of death. That's why it's wrong.
Wait, but you're just talking about the potential in of itself. So are you saying it's the potential is valuable so long as that there's like a cellular life there? Why would it be based on cellular life and then a future experience? Why wouldn't it be based on past experience and future experience?
I think that you have arguments that I just don't agree with, but that's just my
No,
personal
I'm saying if you
beliefs.
value future experience, why wouldn't it be that you value past experience? What differs future experience from past experience that means you value one but not the other?
I value both,
So
future and
okay,
past.
so then that's what you should value is the experience then, right? You shouldn't just value the cellular life. What's like? I'll ask you this question: do you think if it is the case that like we brought up the point, if there was a cellular life, a zygote by itself that never became anything in the future, you wouldn't value it, right?
Yeah, but once it is cultivated in the human body, it's going to grow
So then
and
I'll
it
ask you this
is going
question: do you think
to live.
women who have IUDs are murderers?
No, because the sperm doesn't reach the egg. It's
Oh wait,
not
it can
combined.
though. Not only can an IUD prevent fertilization, but it can also prevent implantation if it does not prevent fertilization. Meaning it
If
would
you,
kill a fertilized egg, right, after conception before it implants into the uterine wall.
I think if people understood the outcomes of their actions, it would help a lot of the abortion. It would cut down abortions. Because I know that a lot of people say that it is because of some reasons, but I think if it were just for reasons like
You
grave
know,
and
cut down abortions, increasing access to contraceptives, right, making conditions better for people.
hmm
So if people have more access to social services, right, that would reduce the
hmm
likelihood of people specifically having to lead to abortions because of economic concerns. So if you want to
yeah.
reduce the likelihood of abortions occurring, you should have voted for Kamala Harris because her policies or better for families, specifically $6,000 child tax credit for the first year of a child's life, 3,600 through them being 5 years old, 3,000 through them being 18, which would have reduced childhood poverty by 45% in this country. That significantly makes it better off for families to be able to have children. So it would reduce the likelihood of people getting abortions, specifically for economically related reasons.
hmm Yeah, I remember Kamala. Sorry, how do you say it?
Kamala.
Kamala. I remember her talking about that, and I thought that in theory is a great idea for some families, and it could be good. But just in my like daily, everyday experience, I don't. I think that you're correct in that. That if people had the right resources, it would go down. I just believe that. I don't know. It's confusing, I guess, but I just know I was on here yesterday, and I just remember you
Okay.
saying like,
Did I talk to you yesterday?
no, I was just listening.
Okay, for sure.
So I just remember you saying about like telling the difference between zygotes, and I just wanted to point out the fact like it is you would be able to tell the difference between a human zygote versus whatever you said like a dolphin zygote.
No, you wouldn't.
Well, genetically testing it like
Yeah,
DNA.
genetically, but by looking at it, you have no clue.
Do you truly, in your heart of hearts, truly believe that this is a human being? This,
Without a doubt.
without a doubt,
Yes.
this is a dolphin fetus.
But in typical context, can you tell the difference between a dolphin and a human being by looking at them?
I don't think that would be a great argument because
Really? Really? You can't tell the difference in typical between a dolphin and a human being, right? Just by looking at them?
it's because they're different life species. You would be looking at the embryo, what would it be, through like ultrasound or what? But basically, through genetic testing, we know humans have 46 chromosomes and other species don't have the same amount. So like we know the difference between humans.
You don't, okay, you can judge, you don't judge on chromosomes. You judge specifically based upon just DNA in general, or you can tell the difference based upon DNA. I'm not disputing that. I don't know what your point is with that. What was your
Yeah,
point?
my point was just saying that, like, I don't think that's a great argument to say that we wouldn't be able to tell the difference when we can. And you can't
No,
zygote with I.
you can't tell the difference in other conventional ways in which we typically tell the difference between human beings and dolphins. You don't need to pull out a genetic testing kit in order to tell the difference between a kid that is looking at a dolphin and a dolphin in an aquarium. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can easily tell the difference, right?
I
It
think, yeah.
shouldn't take you a genetic testing kit in order to be able to tell the difference between the dolphin, right, and the kid looking at the dolphin. Like, come on, that's the point of this.
Yeah, correct. But yeah, I don't know. I think I do just like Trump more on his stance with abortion and then also with border control, but that's a whole nother thing. But I don't know if you wanted to talk about that
You
or
support his position on border control? You said.
I do think we need to have a more tightly closed border
So
as of
do you
now.
support all the ICE raids in Los Angeles?
I do not support that.
Okay. So, but
I
that
did
isn't
think
that proposed specifically by Donald Trump?
yes, but I think that before he was president, I don't think that was I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like I think that his stance was different than what it is now. But
What do you mean?
I just believe that his stance was more in line with mine than Kamala's.
Kamala's. Okay, so wait,
Yeah.
do you regret supporting him given that you have now learned about the ICE raids in Los Angeles?
Correct, because I have
Oh,
multiple
okay. Oh,
friends
so you don't
that
support
are
Trump anymore.
well, I support him in other ways, but
But overall, like, would you go if you could go back in time? Would you vote for him, knowing the information you do now about what he was going to do?
versus Kamala, yes.
You still would vote for him.
Yes.
So then, what do you mean? So you're saying that it's not enough? The ICE raids in LA are not enough for you? The being held civilly liable is not enough for you. The saying you dated a 10-year-old girl in 10 years is not enough for you. The massive tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires at the expense of lower and middle income individuals, the bottom 80% of the country, disproportionately for lower income, right? Paying more into the system after tax, right? Specifically because of this tax policy, right? Whereas people who are disproportionately rich in the top 1% will see disproportionately higher amounts of money in tax cuts, right? While that adds significant amounts to the debt and cuts Medicaid and food stamps. So you're literally taking food off of children's tables, right? In
Mhm.
order to give tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires and add massive amounts to the debt, right? And that's also in tandem with all of the other bad things about Donald Trump that you know.
Yeah, of course he's not well, he's very far from perfect, and he's done very bad things. I just believe that, I mean, if we're talking about like taxes and stuff, I do believe that hard work and your outcomes of your life it is important. Like, I don't know if you earn higher that you should be paying double the amount in tax. I like of your income percentage tax. I think that if we I just feel like it's not socialist, but I do believe that it's it's a complicated system. I don't know much about economics, but yeah, I just don't know. I can't
So what do you
debate
mean
you on something
if what
I'm
you
not.
mean by socialist is social programs? Well, then things like paid family leave, paid maternity leave, and paternity leave, those things, right, are socialist under your view, right? The weekend is socialist, right? Federally mandated weekends, right? The 40-hour work week, minimum wage laws are all socialist to you. The funding for roads. right? And infrastructure and, Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security, all of this is socialist to you. If you consider all of those things socialist and terrible programs, well, then what you're going to have is a system that just significantly disproportionately impacts, right, marginalized communities and benefits the rich, because it is the case that it doesn't have any type of regulatory factors to limit these types of harms from occurring, right, within the context of the market.